Taj al-Din Abu al-Fath Muhammad ibn Abd al-Karīm ash-Shahrastānī was an influential Persian historian of religions and a historiographer. His book, Kitab al-Milal wa al-Nihal, was one of the pioneers in developing a scientific approach to the study of religions. Besides these, he was also an Islamic scholar, philosopher and theologian. Life. Very few things are known about al-Shahrastānī's life. He was born in 1086 CE, 479 AH, in the town of Shahrastān, where he acquired his early traditional education. Later, he was sent to Nishapur, where he studied under different masters who were all disciples of the Ashbakotari theologian al-Juwayni. At the age of 30, al-Shahrastānī went to Baghdad to pursue theological studies and taught for 3 years at the prestigious Ashbakotari school, al-Nizamiyya. Afterwards, he returned to Persia, where he worked as Naib of the Chancellery for Sunja, the Seljuk ruler of Khorasan. At the end of his life, al-Shahrastānī went back to live in his native town, where he died in the year 1153 548. Works. Al-Shahrastānī distinguished himself by his desire to describe in the most objective way the universal religious history of humanity. This is reflected in his Kitab al-Milal wa al-Nihal, a monumental work, which presents the doctrinal points of view of all the religions and philosophies which existed up to his time. The book was one of the earliest systematic studies of religion, and is noted for its non-polemical style and scientific approach. A French translation of the book by Guimarães Monod and Jolivet was sponsored by UNESCO. Besides this, the richness and originality of al-Shahrastānī's philosophical and theological thought is manifested in his other major works, which include the Nihayat al-Aqdam fi Ilm al-Kalam, presents different theological discussions and shows the limits of Muslim theology. The Majlis is a discourse, written during the mature period of his life, delivered to a 12-Ashbakotite audience. The Musara al-Fallacy criticizes Ibn Sina's doctrines by emphasizing some peculiar Ishmaeli arguments on the division of beings. The Mafati al-Azra wa Masubi al-Abrin introduces the Quran and gives a complete commentary on the first 2 chapters of the Quran. Sunni or Ishmaeli. Al-Shahrastānī's own beliefs are difficult to categorize because he juggled many different philosophical and theological vocabularies. He was a clever thinker, demonstrated by the intricacies of many traditions and the Ashbakotite notion of the guide found in his thoughts. Al-Shahrastānī had many reasons to speak somewhat allegorically. He was a very subtle author who often spoke indirectly by means of symbols. He preferred his own personal vocabulary to the traditional one. For this reason, his position is hard to determine. It may well be that ideological considerations led him to speak indirectly. He perhaps assumed those familiar with the symbols would be able to unravel his elusive ideas. For all these reasons, many scholars who have studied al-Shahrastānī were misled concerning his religious identity. Though al-Shahrastānī is generally regarded as an Sunni Ash'ari theologian, he had been accused by his contemporaries, al-Khwarizmi and al-Samani, of being drawn to the people of the mountain fortresses, i.e., the Nizari Ishmailis of Alamat. This view is supported by modern scholars, such as Muhammad Rida Jalali, Muhammad Taqi Danishpati, Wilfred Madelung, Jean Jolivet, Guy Monod, and Diana Steigwald, who characterize his works as belonging to the Ishmaeli tradition, while attributing his public Ash'arism and Shafi'ism to the practice of taqiyya, since his Mabakwotilis were persecuted during that time. philosophy as opposed to Ash'arites. Al-Shahrastani presents a gradation in the creation. He gives a definition of the prophetic impeccability opposed to the ash-Right tradition, maintaining that it subsists in the prophet as part of his real nature. As did al-Ghazali, al-Shahrastani harshly criticizes Avicenna's necessary being who knows the universal but not the particular. Al-Shahrastani, particularly in the al-Falasifa, has an Ishmaeli conception of the originator beyond being and non-being. He argues convincingly for the existence of divine attributes, but he does not ascribe them directly to God. True worship means tawhid, declaring the unicity of God. This includes the negation of all attributes which humans give to God, the ultimate one who is totally transcendent. God is unknowable, indefinable, unattainable, and above human comprehension. As for the theory of creation, in the Nihal, al-Shahrastani insists that God is the only creator and the only agent. He also develops a different interpretation of ex nihilo creation, which does not mean creation out of nothing, but creation made only by God. In the Majlis and the Mafati al-Azra, the angels play a dominant role in the physical creation. His theory of the divine word has a convincing Ishmaeli imprint. For example, his hierarchy of angels and divine words are conceived as being the causes of spiritual beings. Al-Shahrastani in the Nihal writes, His command is pre-existent and his multiple kalimat are eternal. By his command, kalimat become the manifestation of it. Spiritual beings are the manifestation of kalimat and bodies are the manifestation of spiritual beings. The ibda and kalk become manifested spiritual beings and bodies. As for kalimat and letters, they are eternal and pre-existent. Since his command is not similar to our command, his kalimat and his letters are not similar to our kalimat. Since letters are elements of kalimat which are the causes of spiritual beings who govern corporeal beings, all existence subsists in the kalimat. Allah preserved in his command. In the Majlis, al-Shahrastani divides the creation into two worlds, the spiritual world in an achieved state and the world of physical creation in becoming. He shares an like cosmology in which God has built his religion in the image of creation. The conception of prophecy developed in the Nihal is closer to that of his Ilis and Falasifa than to ash-Rites. Because al-Shahrastani establishes a logical link between miracles and prophetic impeccability. For al-Shahrastani, the proof of veracity of the prophet is intrinsic to his nature and is related to his impeccability. He develops the concept of cyclical time explicitly in the Milal, the Majlis, and the Mafati, and implicitly in the Nihal. In the Majlis, his understanding of the dynamic evolution of humanity is similar to Isma-Ism, in which each prophet opens a new cycle. Al-Shahrastani recovers the mythical Quranic story of Moses and the servant of God inspired by al-Risala al-Mudabbir of al-Qadi al-Nu'man. Al-Shahrastani was an able and learned man of great personal charm. The real nature of his thought is best referred to by the term theosophy, in the older sense of divine wisdom. However, al-Shahrastani was certainly not totally against theology or philosophy, even if he was very harsh against the theologians and the philosophers. As he explained in the Majlis, in order to remain on the right path, one must preserve a perfect equilibrium between intellect and audition. A philosopher or a theologian must use his intellect until he reaches the rational limit. Beyond this limit, he must listen to the teaching of prophets and imams. His works reflect a complex interweaving of intellectual strands, and his thought is a synthesis of this fruitful historical period. In his conception of God, creation, prophecy, and imama, al-Shahrastani al-Shahrastani adopted many doctrinal elements that are reconcilable with Nizari Ishmailism. The necessity of a guide, belonging both to the spiritual and the physical world, is primordial in his scheme, since the Imam is manifested in this physical world. Bibliography.